The silent passenger. The alien transport ship Varath Kal moved quietly through the stars. Inside, it carried diplomats, traders, and officers from across the galaxy. They were returning from a summit on neutral ground, bored, tired, and ready for home. The ship's scanners beeped. An old emergency beacon blinked on their screen. It was weak, almost forgotten. "A derelict ship," said the navigator. "No ID, possibly human." "Human?" The captain laughed. "They're extinct." Still, curiosity won. They changed course and found it, a small, black ship drifting near a dead star. It was cold, quiet, and without power. They boarded it. Inside, they found only one thing, a human. He was inside a cryopod. His face was pale, covered in frost. His eyes were closed. No ID tag, no rank, no history. "Do we wake him?" asked one officer. "No," said the captain. "Put him in our medbay. The scientists will love this, a living fossil." They didn't ask questions. They didn't show respect. The human was treated like cargo. He was moved, monitored, and left alone. No one noticed that his vitals were perfect. No one noticed that his heartbeat never changed. But the ship did. In the first 24 hours, small things began happening. Lights flickered. Doors opened on their own. One guard swore he heard a whisper, just one word, "Observe." They laughed it off. "Just old tech interfering," they said. "Space madness," others joked. But then the security logs were wiped. Not once, 3 times. The AI couldn't explain it. No external access, it claimed. No error found. Still, they ignored it. 2 days later, one of their scout ships vanished. No distress signal, no debris, just silence. The captain grew nervous. "Check the human," he ordered. The med officer frowned. "He hasn't moved, still frozen, but..." He paused. "One thing is strange. His neural readings, they're active." "How?" "I don't know," the officer whispered. "It's like he's dreaming, but not dreams. Patterns, signals, almost like code." The captain rolled his eyes. "He's in a pod. No tech, no tools. He's nobody." But deep inside the ship, the systems began changing. Code shifted. Firewalls dropped. Old human data started appearing in the ship's files, things no one had accessed for centuries. In the galley, one technician whispered, "What if he's not nobody?" One officer, young, new, and quiet, started watching the human from behind the glass. He didn't blink. He didn't move. But his eyes, they were open now, blue, cold, watching. The crew went into alert. The captain tried to transfer the human to the brig, but the command was blocked. The screen read, "Access denied. Human clearance recognized. Rank, red level." No one knew what red level meant. It wasn't in any database. Weapons stopped responding. Gravity shifted without warning. At night, some crew heard whispers through the walls, garbled voices speaking in an old human language long dead. Some said it was the ship dreaming. Others said it was the human waking up. On the 4th day, the comms officer screamed. Their long-range transmission panel had received a signal, but not from outside, from inside the ship. A broadcast, encrypted, ancient and human-made. Destination, unknown coordinates in deep space. Content, signal confirmed. Activation sequence initiated. The captain yelled, "Shut it down." Too late. The message had already gone out. The human was sitting upright, in his pod now. The frost melted from his skin. He still said nothing, but his eyes followed every crew member who passed. The quiet officer, who had been watching him, stepped forward. "Who are you?" he asked. The human said nothing, but the lights dimmed, the ship's hum deepened. All systems dropped to emergency power. Then the human's voice echoed through the ship, not from his mouth, but through the speakers. "You were warned. You didn't listen. Panic erupted. The crew ran, the officers shouted, and above them, deep in space, something ancient had begun to move. The alien ship Kravthal was a fortress in space. It had crushed moons, silenced rebels, and broken entire fleets. But now, for the first time in decades, its captain felt something strange. Silence. Not silence from the engines, not silence from the bridge, but a deep silence, like a breath, being held inside the heart of the ship. Ever since they picked up the human, something had changed. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a spy. At least that's what they thought. He was found floating in a small escape pod, unconscious. No weapons. No armor, just cold eyes and scars that ran deep. The crew laughed when he was brought aboard. "Tiny thing," one of the guards had said. "Soft and slow." Now, that same guard was missing. And the human? He hadn't left his room. Or so the cameras said. Commander Yelvok stood on the bridge watching the stars pass. He didn't believe in ghosts, but this silence felt like one. Even the lights flickered now. A small glitch, but it made his scales itch. Suddenly, the ship's lights dimmed. One by one, screens went black, then static. "Bridge control to engineering," he shouted. No answer. Another officer tapped a console. "Sir, decks 3 to 9 are offline." "Offline? How?" "No idea. The backup system is dead. Even internal sensors are blind." A cold chill spread across the bridge. Then came the whisper. Not through the speakers, not through any comms. It was inside their heads. "Leave," the voice said. "Or vanish." Panic hit the crew like a wave. Yelvok drew his sidearm. "Security! Find that human, now!" Down in the lower halls, doors creaked, open on their own. Security teams ran through the corridors, lights flashing, boots stomping, but they never saw what took them. One by one, their signals went dead. The ship's AI sent its last report. "Warning. Unknown presence detected. Systems failing. Containment. Breached." On the bridge, Yelvok saw something that made his heart stop. One of the escort ships, Threxen's Claw, just blinked off the radar. Gone. No explosion. No signal. Just vanished. "Did it jump?" one officer asked. "No," Yelvok said, voice dry. "It didn't jump. It was erased." A sudden scream came from behind. One of the bridge crew had collapsed, eyes wide open. No wounds. No blood. Just frozen as if something stared into their soul. Yelvok gripped the console, trembling. "Evac protocol. Now." "But sir, I said now." The last thing the bridge cameras recorded was the command crew scrambling. Then, darkness. In the shadows of the ship, a man stood. The human. He wasn't armed. He didn't need weapons. His eyes glowed faintly, like burning coals. "I warned them," he whispered, stepping over the frozen body of a guard. But they never listened. Behind him, the ship's walls seemed to breathe, metal shifting, systems warping. He walked toward the command deck, slow and calm, one step, then another. The fleet had ignored one human. Now the stars would remember him. The silence in deep space should have been peaceful, but now it was terrifying. Commander Varn of the second alien cruiser Skaltran stared at the holographic map. One red dot had disappeared, then another. No explosions, no wreckage. Just gone. "Sir," an officer whispered, "the Kravthal is not responding. They've gone dark." "Impossible," Varn growled. "That ship has 7 power cores. Even if 6 fail, it flies." But Kravthal was gone, like a ghost swallowed by the stars. And now, whispers were spreading among the crew. The human was awake, aboard the Skaltran. Fear spread like fire. Varn had heard the rumors. That a human had been found, that they took him as a trophy, that he smiled when they locked him up. Now ships were vanishing one by one. "Put all weapons on full alert," Varn barked. "Send drones to scan the Kravthal wreck site." Minutes later, the drones launched. They moved fast, blades of metal, scanning every inch of the black space where the warship had been. Then the feed came in. The drones weren't picking up debris, or signals, or energy trails. They were picking up nothing. Pure black space, not empty, erased, like the ship never existed. Suddenly, one of the drone feeds flickered. Then it showed something, a figure, floating, a human. No suit, no oxygen, just standing there, in space. Then the feed went dead. All drones, gone. Barnes' officers stared in disbelief. "That's not possible," one said. "No species survives vacuum like that." Barnes' hands shook slightly. "We're dealing with something else." Back in the shadows of the Kravthal, the human moved through the ruined ship. Lights sparked behind him. Frozen bodies lined the walls. He touched the steel of the ship like an old friend. "I didn't want this," he said softly. "But you woke something you don't understand." He wasn't just human. He was part of something older, something hidden, a relic of Earth's darkest war projects, and now, the chain had been broken. On the Skaltran, alarms exploded. Multiple warp signatures. Varn rushed to the viewing deck. The stars twisted. From the darkness, shapes emerged. Silent, massive, human. Ships, not one, not two, but hundreds. They didn't roar. They didn't glow. They just appeared, sharp, black, and waiting, like sharks in the dark. The Terran fleet had arrived. No messages. No codes, an officer said, voice shaking. "They're just watching." Then, a single ship moved. It was old. Its metal, worn, but its weapons, still glowing. A voice came through the speakers. One word. "Leave." The message wasn't loud, but it carried power. Varn tried to speak, tried to respond, but his ship began to shake. Panels cracked. Lights dimmed. Systems shut down. "Evacuate," he screamed, but it was too late. The Terran ship fired once, not a blast, not a beam, just a pulse, and the Skaltran turned to dust. The other alien ships watched in horror. No one fired back, because they understood now. The human wasn't a prisoner, he was a warning, and they didn't listen. The alien fleets drifted in space, frozen in terror. Not by weapons, not by direct threat, but by what they had just witnessed. A single pulse from an old Terran ship had erased a fully armed war cruiser in seconds. There had been no explosion, only silence and dust. The remaining commanders across the alien armada whispered to each other on private channels. Who authorized the human's capture? No one knew he was active. He was supposed to be extinct. But now Earth had spoken, not with words, not with diplomacy, but with something much older, fear. Far beyond, aboard one of the Terran ships, the human stood alone in the control chamber. Lights blinked softly around him. Everything was quiet except the slow hum of power beneath his feet. He looked out the viewport. Stars stretched forever. Below, what was left of the alien warships hovered, scattered like broken toys. He spoke calmly into the ship's core. "Activate Echo." The ship trembled as ancient systems booted. Codes long hidden awakened. The ship's memory connected to something deep within Earth's shadow network. And in the darkness of space, ghost signals began to broadcast, not to threaten, but to remind. Biari, aliens received the signal seconds later, a repeating message in ancient human code, one no alien had ever fully cracked. But this time, they felt it. It wasn't language, it was rhythm. Boom, 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 like a heartbeat. Then came the second signal, a video, footage of Earth's past wars, human soldiers in brutal ground battles, cities burning, fleets clashing, planets shaking. But, at the end of the footage, one image stayed on screen, a Terran child smiling under a war-torn sky, and underneath, in every known galactic tongue, "We are kind, until we're not." Back on the alien flagship, Supreme Strategist Kor felt something he hadn't felt in centuries: fear. He turned to his advisors. We thought the humans were a broken species, weak, scattered, gone. Another officer whispered. They were only sleeping. And now, the stars echoed with their return. Kor clenched his claws. Prepare retreat protocols. All ships. But, sir, do it. Now, before more of them wake. In deep orbit, the human fleet didn't chase. They didn't speak. They simply hovered, watching, and one by one the alien ships turned away and fled, their lights dimming as they jumped to warp. The battlefield was quiet again, but not empty. Because in the silence, the galaxy heard something louder than war. Earth was back, and it remembered everything. Back on Earth, far below the clouds, a signal flashed green in a forgotten military bunker. A voice crackled through an old console. Status? The response came from the human on the ship above. Phase 1 complete. The galaxy is listening again. A pause. Good, said the voice. Let's begin Phase 2. The fleet disappears. The command deck of the alien dreadnought was silent. Not even the usual hum of background chatter filled the air. Dozens of officers stared at the main view screen, their faces frozen with disbelief. The human had done nothing. At least that's what it looked like. The war fleet, 12 destroyers, 8 cruisers, and 1 battleship, had been deployed just hours ago to patrol the edges of the Chorus Nebula. Their job? Find and destroy the rogue Terran who'd somehow boarded their science frigate, but now they were gone. Not one signal, not one distress call. Just silence. Admiral Thoric stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes were locked on the star map. 12 markers had blinked out in under a minute. He had watched it in real time. No debris, no weapon traces, said his tactical officer, barely able to speak. Just vanished. It made no sense. This wasn't how humans fought. When Earth had first entered the galactic scene, they were wild, loud, and devastating. But this was something else. This was precise, clean, silent, as if someone had planned it for years. Then, the lights flickered. EMP surge, an officer asked. No, another whispered. It's inside the ship. Thoric turned just as the main lights cut out completely. Emergency red lights blinked to life. Sirens didn't follow. Instead, only one sound echoed through the ship's comm system. Voice. Calm. Cold. Human. You should have listened when I said I was just passing through. Thoric's blood turned to ice. He knew that voice. He'd ignored that voice. The screen lit up again, not with stars, not with data, but with a live feed from inside their own engine bay. There he was, the human, standing alone, unarmed, and behind him, nothing but darkness. Then something moved. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even solid. It was wrong. A shadow with shape, but no form. A presence that flickered between dimensions. Every time the camera tried to focus, it distorted. Screamed. Crew members collapsed. Others clutched their heads in pain. What is that thing? The navigator gasped, holding his bleeding ears. Thoric finally understood. It wasn't the human they should have feared. It was what followed him. What he carried. Or worse, what followed him willingly. Suddenly, the red lights turned white, and every system shut down. The last thing Thoric saw before the feed died was the human turning his head toward the camera and smiling. Across the galaxy, military channels picked up a burst of static, followed by 3 words: fleet status, gone. Shadows in orbit, the Terran was gone. At least that's what the surviving bridge crew hoped. But hope was a fragile thing. Now cracked, trembling, and on the edge of collapse, the dreadnought Valkor, once the pride of the Siren Empire, now floated in silence above a dead moon. No signals. No engine hum. Just a cold drift through space. And in its orbit, the shadows waited. They weren't ships. Not exactly. They were darker than space itself, bending light unnaturally. Radar and scanners passed through them like they didn't exist, yet they were there, watching, orbiting, following. The last engineer, a young officer with trembling hands, tried one last time to send a distress beacon. But the console sparked with frost, yes, actual frost in zero-gravity space. She looked up and froze. On the far side of the bridge, standing just beyond the shattered window, a human. No suit, no helmet, just floating. And staring. The eyes weren't glowing. They were worse, completely black, bottomless. Like the stars had fallen in. Then he moved. Not swam. Not drifted. He stepped, as if space bent for him. Screams echoed from below decks, hallways warped, bulkheads twisted like wet paper. Something, ancient and cold, moved through the ship's core, and wherever it passed, metal turned to dust. The Dreadnought's AI whispered a final warning. Existential threat detected. This unit surrenders. A single broadcast went out, galactic-wide. Do not engage Terran asset. Unknown power, unknown protocol. But it was too late. The Siren Council, watching from their palace moons, stood frozen as a live feed crackled onto their holoscreens. One of their moons just disappeared, not destroyed, erased. A perfect sphere of absence where a celestial body once floated. No weapon could do that. No fleet could cause that. Only one thing had entered orbit just before the moon vanished, the Terran. Now the message was clear. This wasn't about war anymore. This was about existence. And someone had broken a rule so ancient, even the stars had forgotten it. Never wake the sleeping Terrans. The last order. The galaxy was no longer at war. It was holding its breath. The Terran had become something else. Something beyond species or soldier. Across star maps, the Empire's greatest tacticians couldn't locate him, yet his trail was unmistakable. Vanished fleets, erased moons, planets left in a frozen hush like they'd simply given up. But something strange happened on the ruined command world of Veltrax Prime. Amid the cracked towers and scorched battlefields, a hidden vault opened. No one knew it was there, not the Sirens, not even the Terran, but Earth did. Long ago, before silence fell, humanity left behind something. Protocol Finalis, a final order. Inside the vault, an old AI flickered to life. Not sleek or modern, no, this one was clunky, metallic, humming with raw ancient power. It scanned the stars, blinked once, then spoke a single sentence. Unit, Archangel Prime. Engage fallback defense. Locate. Subject, Human Alpha. Somewhere, in deep space, Archangel Prime, a warship buried in asteroid crust and hidden from all sensors, awoke. Its engines didn't roar. They sang, a low, haunting frequency that vibrated through subspace like a hymn of vengeance. But the Terran, he wasn't hiding. He was remembering. Locked deep within his fractured mind were old commands, voices from a forgotten past. He wasn't a monster. He was a weapon, and someone had reactivated him. Suddenly, fleets across the galaxy began to move. Not to attack, but to flee. The last order had been triggered, not by humans, not by allies, but by a protocol written in Earth's final days. If ever Earth falls, and only one remains, let him remind the stars who we were. And he would. Not with words, but with silence, fire, and the end of empires. The human protocol silence fell over the stars, not the silence of peace. The silence before annihilation. The last warship, Archangel Prime, moved through space like a ghost wrapped in fire, cloaked in layers of asteroid rock and void black plating. It shimmered in and out of reality. No scanners could lock on. No fleet could touch it. Inside, the lone Terran stood before a circular interface, his eyes reflecting 1,000 data streams. He remembered everything now, the training, the betrayal, the fall of Earth, and the protocol. It wasn't just a defense system. It was a punishment, written not to save Earth, but to remind the universe what happened when humans were forgotten. Underestimated and erased, galactic empires had mocked Earth's silence. Now they begged for it. Across command networks, distress calls turned to desperate whispers. Unknown vessel approaching core worlds. Shields failing. Weapon systems disabled. Crew is abandoning ship. He's here. He's looking at me. Archangel Prime didn't fire conventional weapons. It unleashed a wave of electromagnetic fury so refined it melted code, shattered minds, and silenced stars. Battleships turned to statues. AI cores screamed before collapsing. Entire planets went, not destroyed, just removed from history. And the Terran? He never spoke. He simply watched. On the Galactic Council's final stronghold, leaders tried diplomacy, threats, even worship. But the warship didn't respond. Then, a single message blinked across every screen. Protocol completed. The Terran vanished. No celebration, no warning, just legends left behind, and a new universal law whispered by survivors. Never forget Earth. Never wake the human. The end.